The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. Albert Einstein. Welcome to the Eden Bridge. I'm Henry, your facilitator here at the Eden Bridge. Today we are discussing religion, the bridge between meaning and mystery. This is a continuation of our series of the model of consciousness that says that the right side of the brain deals with mystery, spirituality, and religion. It is the irreducible part of the brain. And the left side is where we encounter rational, logical, and structured thinking, philosophy, psychology, and of course, science, physics. But because my friend Albert here showed us that there's a deep problem in how we handle the right side of our understanding, and it's very important to understand this as the foundation of understanding consciousness. Because once again, no one can explain what consciousness really is, although many people have theories. But we can identify how consciousness expresses itself, how it operates, what's the behavior, and what's the results. So, if I go back to my presentation here, we want to discuss why religion is such an important part of what we're doing. Most people today think religion is an outdated belief system, something humanity once needed but has outgrown. In modern culture, religion is often portrayed as a relic of the past. It is treated as a system of beliefs that once helped early humans cope with fear, uncertainty, and the mysteries of the natural world. As science expanded and technology advanced, many assumed religion would slowly disappear and replaced by rational understanding and empirical knowledge. Think of Einstein's quote, "We will elevate the servant and ignore the gift." But what is this assumption? What if this assumption misunderstands the very nature of what religion is? It was never primarily about belief in the first place. What if religion is something much deeper than a collection of doctrines and traditions? Not a doctrine, not an institution, not merely a belief system, but a structure. So in order to go down and try and get to grips with our title, Religion, the Bridge Between Mystery and Meaning, we need to discuss certain authors as foundational. It's important because there's a lot of misinformation. And because we most get our information these days through social media platforms, it is very important to really understand who the real foundational authors are, why we use them, and how we expand from them. Just think about the amazing Carl Jung and everything that how many YouTube channels are there that quote, Carl Jung said, your twin flame has passed a test. Really? When did Carl Jung say that? Because I can promise you he never did. C.S. Lewis said the following. This is the interpretation of Narnia. No. We go back to the original sources, we learn from them, and from there we build. We really focus on how we expand our knowledge from those that have gone before us. Remember the great statement from, I think it was Isaac Newton, I could be incorrect. I see further because I stand on the shoulders of giants. Let's look at C.S. Lewis. So what makes Lewis relevant for us is that he did not primarily look at institution and ecclesiastical positions and authorities. He approached religion through reason, narrative, and moral experience. Now, whether you like his interpretation of moral experience or not, it's not relevant here. It is foundational. Lewis argued that human beings possess an innate sense of moral law, something deeper than social conventions. From that observation, he built one of the clearest modern arguments for the existence of God. Once again, you can accept it or reject it, that's not the issue here. But think of the book The Lord of the Flies that was touted as this is what happens when humans are thrown into unique circumstances, and it has been held up as the example for almost 70 years. And unfortunately for people doing that, that represents a very narrow slice of elite British private school students. Many studies have found that in cases where people were thrown into situations like that, it didn't devolve into a power struggle and a mundane, chaotic, despotic situation. And that is what proves Lewis to be ahead of his time in his thinking. So Lewis wrote two works of note to start off with. He wrote a lot of stuff. Mere Christianity and the Chronicles of Narnia. What he understood was that religion speaks through myth and imagination, and therefore he gave us both. One speaks to the rational mind, and the other one speaks to the imagination. Lewis showed religion is not just irrational, it is deeper rationality that makes meaning possible, and that's what links us to our title. Suggested quote, if people talk about C.S. Lewis, where do we start? What he tried to convey in this quote is, I believe Christianity as much as I believe that the sun has risen. Not only because I see it, but by it I see everything else. That gives you sort of a map of his mind. So to conclude with Lewis, he thus becomes the architect of meaning through story in terms of religion. Reason, myth, and moral imagination coming together. Our next author is John Lennox. What an amazing, brilliant man, and a joy to always listen to him argue. Emeritus professor from Oxford in mathematics. Science explains how, but it doesn't explain why. Meaning, mind, and God. Mystery gives us meaning, gives us reality. So science needs a bit more than math. His deeper argument about science itself is key to note. Science relies on realities that it cannot explain. It tells us the how and not the why. The universe is rationally structured. Human minds can understand it, and mathematics describes this reality. Why is reality intelligent? And that brings us back to meaning. The next author introduced by Jordan Peterson to the wider world is Jonathan Bigelow. Why, not just author, but podcaster, YouTuber. Jonathan is really a very interesting person, and why I bring him in is if you truly engage with his work, you see somebody that's an Eastern Orthodox, a relic maker, which is about meditation, symbology, and the application. And you see this bridge. basically conveying truth through patterns and archetypes. Once again, from mystery to meaning, through reason, evidence, and truth. So these are foundational people. 3 different angles so that we can view it from a more holistic perspective. Let's look at why we are doing this and why religion matters. Religion is a direct manifestation of consciousness, a structured inner narrative, an expression of spirituality, a collective experience, and a collective narrative. Look at our context graph here. We have a mystery in the beginning where we say the archetype, the pattern, and the symbol. That leads us into spirituality, which is resonance, alignment, and coherence. We observe a pattern, experience an archetype, and we encode it in a symbol. That is, in alignment with our inner being. That then goes into what we call religion, which becomes the container in which we hold this through narrative, ritual, and communion. The narrative side is the story of ourself and reality. The ritual is our focus, presence, and realignment to reinforce the narrative and give it structure. From there, we believed into a lived meaning based on values, practice, and culture. So you see an overall structure appear that is ignored in many, many discussions on any of these topics. The process of the human mind, the language and the expression of consciousness. Religion is a key part in understanding that. So therefore we can now go ahead to look at our journey. Mystery, spirituality, religion gives meaning. And only in meaning does Einstein's servant become relevant. Philosophy, science, culture, psychology, understanding, reasoning. What do we know? Why do we know it? How do we behave resultingly? How do we measure it? How do we observe it? So, let's look at religion first of all being a structure. It gives us a scaffolding for how we interpret reality through narrative, ritual, and communion. Why do we need the structure? Structure creates stability. Without the structure, the meaning collapses, the spirituality dissolves, and the experience just becomes chaotic. Have you looked at the news lately? Religion provides the framework that holds meaning over time. What happens if we remove that, or we try to remove it? Keep that in the back of your mind. Religion is a bridge of understanding, and it stabilizes our experience. Can it go wrong? Yes, it can. And we'll address some of that. Our second part, or our first part really of understanding this, narrative, ritual, communion, is the narrative. The story we live on the inside. When I speak to people and I ask them, why do you believe in God? They will tell me because of what I have experienced. And this is not just Christians. I've spoken to Muslims, I've spoken to Buddhists, Hindus. I look forward to actually speaking with Sikhs. I haven't spoken to Sikhs yet. And even more beautiful is really getting to grips with modern Judaism and some of its interpretations. Once again, there's good and bad sides to all of this. I'm not value judging any of them. We can learn a lot from how people interpret their reality and the narrative of their inner scaffolding. What is your inner scaffolding? The narrative forms a spiritual scaffolding of the mind. It helps you organize what's going up in here. We do not live in reality directly. We live in the story we tell ourselves about reality. Paradigms shape our perception. Paradigms are bundles of beliefs. That is where your narrative comes in. It provides orientation. Narrative answers, who am I? Where am I going? What matters? Narrative organizes my experience and gives it meaning. Never thought that Joseph Campbell would be so important, did you? Now, it is important when we come to narrative to understand values. There's a lot, and I mean a lot of misinformation on values available. Pop psychology has really reduced it to moralisms and idealisms, ways of controlling and manipulation. I will postulate that values are intrinsic motivators based on where you spend your time, energy, and resources. It's how you choose to live life. You have created a meaning for yourself through your narrative. And by observing you, I can see what is important to you, what drives you internally. It is never to get out of bed in them, to be a good person, or to be honest, or to be diligent. Those are not values. Values are revealed by where we live and how we express ourselves, not what we claim to believe. So therefore, when somebody makes a value statement, it's almost difficult not to start giggling. Let's just observe you. Let's observe your life. What's important to you? How do you spend your time, energy, and resources? Because that is an expression of what's important to you. Too quickly. So, values directs our attention, aligns our priorities, and it's basically how we base our decisions. They shape our entire narrative structure. So you cannot escape the link between the internal narrative and values and meaning. Almost as I said, love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. So does values, meaning, and internal narrative. Our next part of religion is understanding the role of the ritual. What is your personal ritual? Think of these words: focus, presence, and realignment. Ritual is not just mass religious rituals. We all have our own personal rituals. What shoe do you put on first in the morning? Do you wake up and go on your cell phone first? Do you go and have breakfast first? What is your ritual? What is your morning ritual? Do you spend time in quiet contemplation, aligning yourself mentally and spiritually for the day? Or do you go to exercise? These are all rituals. Focus, presence, and realignment. If I change realignment with boundaries, I come to what we call the embodiment of being. So the ritual is your embodiment of your spiritual practice that also leads to community-based and collective embodiment. So repeated focus builds neural pathways. That's why we do the ritual. We either build a neural pathway or we activate it. It anchors the spiritual alignment in the body. Remember that we said true spirituality is about alignment, resonance, and internal coherence. The ritual helps us to cut out the fluff, focus on the core, and align with it. It creates continuity, and this is where it becomes very important and why religion becomes such a powerful container. It connects the past, the present, and the future. Centers you in the now and aligns you with both sides of yourself. It allows meaning to cross generations and time. Without joint and collective rituals, there is no transmission of intergenerational meaning. Why do you think we are in the trouble we are in? Our next part is communion. Shared meaning. Because we are individuals that have an internal narrative and we are relational creatures, we tend to run off and connect with those of similar persuasion than ourselves. So from our individual narrative, we create a collective narrative. Where do you belong? Who are your people? Is it your employer's responsibility to make you belong, as many of the modern identity debates try to bring up? Or are you a belonging creation creating creature? So humans are social meaning makers. Where do you create meaning collectively? Let's use that pop word. Who's your tribe? Who's your people? Who are you in alignment, resonance, and coherence with? Needless to say, different modes of that as well. Discussion for another day. Communion transforms individual insight into collective culture. It shapes the narrative structure of the collective. And therefore it also becomes the collective consciousness expression, aka Koyum. Religion, therefore, is the bridge between the personal meaning and the shared civilizational meaning. If we don't have this bridge, why do we find individuals struggling with personal meaning, and why is societal meaning collapsing? We've removed the scaffolding, and we've removed the transmission across generations. That brings us to the enemy. I was in two minds of whether we had to discuss the enemy as expressed in religion, but it's not just religion. Dogma or frozen inquiry, as it is defined, you'll find in science, you'll find it in psychology, you'll find it in philosophy, you'll find it in spirituality, and unfortunately, in my favorite field, mystery, you'll find a lot of it. So there's a lot of fluff we need to cut through. You know, people are throwing around certain names when it comes to mystery. I don't want to spoil this video by going down that rabbit hole. But those were dogmatic interpretations, very narrow interpretations. So dogma is our enemy in general, frozen inquiry, when we refuse to start thinking and refuse to learn and refuse to grow. Yes, based on Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Carlo Cipolla. Yeah, we'll call that stupidity. But that's once again a great discussion for another day. Let's go back to dogma. Structure without inquiry becomes oppression. When religion stops evolving, ritual becomes empty. Narrative becomes rigid. And think of this. Communion becomes exclusion. Think about it. Think about the religions you encounter. Are they seeking inclusion or are they exclusionary? Telltale sign. Now I created this beautiful map of a problem with dogma, but it's very busy. So you can have this copy, but I created a more cleaner, nicely modern one that is easier to understand because it doesn't have all the frills and fuss in it. One is for poster on the wall, this is for understanding. Let's look at this. Closed dogma versus integrated meaning systems. Remember, we're saying religion is the bridge between mystery and meaning. So in order to do that, we must have an integrated meaning system. You'll see we've got 3 columns. The structure we have religion, symbolism, and interpretation. On the one side, we have a closed dogmatic cycle. Then we explain the category error, misapplied frameworks, and then we looked at the integrative perspective. The closed dogmatic cycle, a pre-committed dogma. I have decided this is my point of view, then I go and I find whatever text, verses, parts of sacred text to prove it. I'm going to ignore the contradictions and actual other interpretations of that in the same text. I'm going to make absolutist claims. I'm going to, based on my absolutist claims, morally judge other people. And this is a closed epistemic loop. It's frozen. If you encounter that, you do not, and I'm serious, when you encounter a closed epistemic loop, especially of dogma, you do not argue with it. You cannot convince a closed mind. The category error is that we're taking a literal moral framework and we are now trying to impose it on a symbolic mapping system. Symbolic systems are patterns, meaning language. Religious texts are based on symbolic, moral, and narrative meanings. So all these debates that you see, creationist versus atheist, the nature of God, religion versus science, they all fall under this in various forms, whether it's just a category error, whether it's an ontological error, whether it's just a biased error. Do not engage in these debates. One of my great mentors taught me the following phrase that I kept in my heart all my life. For those who believe, let's start with, for those who do not believe, no amount of proof will suffice. But for those who believe, no proof is necessary. Go and think about that one. Do not get involved with senseless debates that are literally running on rage bait for clicks, when it is literally scientifically error. It's error. That's all I can say. And unfortunately, there's a lot of scientists involved in this as well. Our integrated perspective, therefore, is If there is a God, the only definition that fits is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. If we accept that, then reality must have meaning. We do not reject reality. Why? Because rejecting reality is a denial of divine coherence. So from an integrative perspective, we engage reality, we interpret patterns, we maintain agency. And once again, just quickly looking at agency, I did a whole video on agency. Many people who misuse religion and science do it for one reason. They want your agency. When you understand the truth of being, the core part of being is your agency. That you can never ever surrender to anyone outside yourself. The moment you do that, you're in trouble. So our problem here is not belief systems. It's the loss of symbolic literacy and integrated thinking within them. What does this mean? If we lose symbolic literacy, mystery takes symbols and it makes it a threat. How many people will tell you, oh, the occult says this? Occult just means hidden. There's lots of parts of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam that's also hidden. Does it make it evil? Is there a thing called evil? All discussions for other videos. Spirituality, I recognize pattern, and because it's not what I've been taught, it's a heresy. And religion now says inquiry becomes disobedience. Think about all the religions that you know. How comfortable are they with criticism of their practices? And can you criticize the religious leaders? Because I thought humility and being humble was one of the traits of spirituality. So in terms of dogma, all I can say is that living religion must remain dynamic. Religion must remain connected to mystery, spiritual experience, and ongoing reflections. I've seen some beautiful debates with religious scholars about the continuous evolution of how the human mind perceives God inside a religious framework. And I thought it was amazing. So there is hope when it comes to how people approach this. Now for the next part, if you followed my videos up to now, you'll sort of think, Henry, you're just going to repeat stuff you said previously. This is bringing our 4 modern crises into why we need this bridge between meaning and mystery. The collapse of meaning we're experiencing globally is the direct result of 70 years of trying to eradicate mystery, deny spirituality, and ignore religion. It has profound societal impacts. For most of human history, religion provided the framework through which people interpreted reality. It answered the fundamental questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What matters? When these frameworks disappear, people do not become purely rational, as Carl Sagan had hoped. And I believe Carl Sagan would be the first person to admit his error for all of those who want to deify him. He was a brilliant mind for his time, and he was limited by the understanding of his time. Our first crisis is the crisis of meaning. Without a shared narrative, life becomes fragmented, identity becomes unstable, and purpose becomes subjective. Think about why modern society is obsessed with identity construction, personal meaning, and self definition. Humans are narrative beings. Remove the narrative structure, and meaning must be constantly reinvented. After 2020, we have experienced an absolute collapse of societal and institutional trust, already based on a deep, deep personal collapse of trust in the decade before. Religion historically stabilized moral authority, social cohesion, and shared values. Just watch the news. Without shared frameworks, trust shifts from institutions to tribes. Hello, is anybody listening? Produces polarization, institutional collapse, and permanent suspicion. Do you think the current situation we are experiencing globally is sustainable? What do you think the outcomes will be? I can tell you there's a lot of speculation. Most of it will be wrong. We're experiencing a deep crisis of comfort. Religion historically provided existential reassurance, community belonging, rituals for grief and suffering, which is part of the human experience. Remember, accept reality. Modern culture replaced these with consumerism, therapy culture, and digital distraction. And guess what? That results in anxiety, loneliness, and nihilism. Friedrich Nietzsche is making a comeback. We went and dig him up and reanimating him. The abyss is finally looking back at us, saying, how long have you stared into me? Now it's time to stay back. Are you going to be the finale mensch? Or are you striving to become an Ubermensch? Almost do the entire thing. There's lots about Nietzsche on the internet. I'm not going to do him separately per se. But he does teaches us a lot so that we can get to Jung. If you really appreciate Jung, then you will find that Nietzsche is sort of the gateway. And then lastly, a crisis of critical thinking. In modernity, many believe that removing religion would produce more rational people, a society based on rationality and logic. But yes, we are not rational and we are not logical, are we? We are narrative creatures. Instead, we see conspiracy thinking, ideological tribalism, and narrative manipulation. Once again, just go onto your media platforms. Humans cannot live without meaning frameworks. When religion disappears, those frameworks reappear as political ideology, identity narratives, and secular belief systems, often without the stabilization that religion provides. And when we do mystery, we'll go onto the whole reason why all knowledge is not for all people, as pop spirituality is claiming. While there was layers of knowledge and layers of initiation, because it's based on personal journeys. So there you have it. Religion did not simply provide beliefs, it provided civilization's cognitive infrastructure. So coming back to just what we are really discussing today is that religion is there to stabilize your spiritual life and to become a container for it. Your spiritual life is the direct result of your alignment, resonance, and coherence with mystery. Religion provides narrative, ritual, and communion. Religion is the fundamental bridge between mystery and meaning that allows us to appropriately use the left-hand side, Einstein's servant, that is there to help us explain and to stabilize. Religion, therefore, is the crossing from mystery to structure. It gives us meaning. Beautiful infographic of the 3 pillars of religion that summarizes what we've discussed today. The 3 pillars of religion: narrative, ritual, and communion. The structure that stabilizes spiritual life. Religion is the bridge between mystery and meaning. We've got first narrative, the story that gives direction. It connects the past, present, and future. It gives meaning and orientation, and is the bridge over time. We have ritual, the practice that repeats this crossing, creates sacred moments. It transforms the ordinary into the sacred, and it marks our passage. Communion is the community of shared meaning, builds belonging and identity, shared values and purpose, crossing together. It is thus part of the cohesion of society. There's a lot I can say about what's practically going on, but let's not go down the pop quiz culture here. Let's honor what we're discussing. Religion, narrative, ritual, communion, the architecture of spiritual life. If you want to know why I'm so careful of not going into public discussions, my idea and the work that I do is not to criticize. I'm not there to tell people they're wrong. I'm not there to tell them they've missed the point. I'm there to provide a viable alternative way of thinking. My understanding, my experience translated into logical, coherent expression and saying, what is it that we are not seeing? So I'm not here to point out your mistakes. You know what your mistakes are. Well, some people do and some don't. So I'm not here to tell you this physicist is missing the point or that psychologist is ridiculous. I don't care. What is the coherent, integrated view that I can put forward to say, well, maybe look at the other side. In the biblical narrative, there is a very beautiful analogy of Jesus saying to the disciples when they didn't catch any fish, throw out your net on the other side. If what the mainstream media, science, and everything is doing, is working, why are we not experiencing the results? Maybe we are not catching on the right side of the boat. Just a thought. Let's get back to, therefore, seeing religion playing this bridge role. On the one side, we've got the irreducible side of the brain, of the human cognition process, and the language and expression of consciousness, mystery, spirituality, and religion. On the other side, we've got the analysis, explanation side, the structure stabilizing side of philosophy, psychology, and physics. That's my main 3 departing points. We do not throw away anything. We acknowledge what each brings, but we do not give any of them a primary position. Physics does not have dominion over the definition of energy. It has a view of energy. In the same way, spirituality does not define energy, but we understand energy when we look at how spirituality treats it and how physics treats it. Consciousness, and so we can go on. Not because we will ever build a complete picture, but because it gives us a better, clearer way of looking at it. You as a human is the bridge. Humans are not biological machines. We are participants in meaning. Religion is the structure that allows the participation to endure. That's why in our next video we are going to look at localized consciousness and the difference between mind, soul, and spirit on one axis, and then the other axis is mind, body, and once again that beautiful word, communion. What is differentiation? Why are we having this experience that we have? So religion was never meant to imprison the human spirit. Yeah, I know it. I know it's still doing. It was meant to build a bridge between mystery and meaning. Help us understand the greater picture that we are part of intrinsically. Religion is not about proving ancient stories. Don't get involved in those debates. It is the architecture that allows the human spirit to live in alignment with the mystery of being. Contemplate that. What we actually know is very little, although many people will tell you just how much we've learned. The true hard questions cannot be answered. And without a religious scaffold, whatever that religion is, you basically have to believe that you're a biological machine that has an expiry. And yet, the anecdotal evidence is overwhelming. That is not the correct way of looking at the world and the word. Thank you for joining me in this discussion on religion. I hope you look at religion differently now. I hope you understand why it's part of our experience and that we should not ignore our experience. Whatever religion it is that you're following, I'm not here to debate the veracity of any such claims. My primary interest is the translation from mystery to meaning and really understand mystery. There are beautiful mystery traditions in all religions because they're all, in essence, in the mystery parts, come to the same conclusions. It's in the dogmatic parts where we find the big, dangerous, unbalanced worldviews and results. So I hope you will join me towards a world of wonder and seeing the magnificence of the experience that we're all having. See you again soon.